Your view on Biden's visit then, because he did give the Israelis room to take on Hamas, support, solidarity, a recognition that an invasion was acceptable and indeed necessary. But he tempered his words somewhat as well. What did you make of his performance on the world stage in Israel?
Yeah, so there's two things here. There's I have to say it sort of fits into two stereotypes. One is what American presidents do, and one is what Joe Biden does. He did what all American presidents do, which is support Israel in its time of need, and of course it has quite a few times of need in terms of its isolation from its neighbors. Joe Biden hasn't been particularly friendly to Benjamin Netanyahu. Netanyahu is kind of openly aligned with the sort of right in America, the right which supports his much harder line view than most, the American establishment, if you like, would like to see Netanyahu taking in a lot of the conflictual issues that Israel is involved in. So Biden has kind of withheld approval from Netanyahu by and large, particularly since Netanyahu became prime minister again earlier this year. And but at the end of the day, American presidents come and stand by Israel. So that's what Biden's done. He has also done what Biden does, which is to temper everything and say, well, we have to look at both sides. We have to engage with you have to engage with your enemy. You can't just be wage total war, trying to be sympathetic to the Palestinian side in terms of humanitarian stuff. What we don't really know is whether there's any grand strategy behind that. If Israel is to survive in this region and flourish, it's hard to see in the long term how Israel can do that unless it keeps reasonable relations with its close neighbors like Egypt and Jordan, unless it has some solution what it's going to do with the Palestinians that it rules over. Whether that be directly or in the West Bank and indeed in Gaza, which he doesn't rule over, but has a security control over. So Biden is saying, don't forget this. We still have to take this into account. He doesn't seem to actually have any clear proposals.
No, and maybe there are none. I mean, it's an interesting that the context of this was that horrendous explosion in the hospital, and Biden came at a time where lots of people in the region, lots of Arab nations were saying it was definitely Israel. It feels that has stepped away in terms of not the Arab reaction to it necessarily, but the world's reaction seems to recognise we cannot, certainly, it's gone from it was definitely Israel on the night from many people, including in the Arab world, to it's complicated, to is it now fair to say, and this is down to Joe Biden partially, Joe Biden has given the imprimatur of American intelligence to say we accept it was not Israel. Did it go as far as that?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, less assertively and with less 100% conviction, if you like, than the Israeli side. No, this is going to be as Louise said, a sort of defining moment for a quite distressing reason, which is to do with what we call the disinformation age. I'm not going to say 100% that it was the Palestinians who did it, but the evidence that the Israelis have provided and the US have backed says that it was most likely a Palestinian rocket. Absolutely everybody in the Arab world believes that Israel did it.
Do they even now? Has that changed?
The information difference now is itself a motive factor for conflict.
Has that changed at all over the last 24 hours? Because obviously the Arab nations said it was Israel. Will they wobble on that? Or actually, are they so defined by their position in this that forever in those nations, in those diplomatic circles, it will always be said that Israel did it?
I reached out to a couple of the more what you might call sympathetic to Israel states to see if they would change or retract their assertion that Israel did it. I received silence in response. So I don't see any sign of a wobble on that, which is quite a frightening thing. If assuming that Israel and the US are right on the evidence available.
And what happens next? Because if there is an invasion, and it may become in phases rather than in one big go, but there's going to be clearly more martial intervention by Israel in Gaza. People will die. There will be other events like this, won't there? There will be other occasions when buildings are flattened, where civilians are killed. That is, as we've discussed before, Richard, an unfortunate corollary of war, a deeply unfortunate, a tragic corollary of war. As that happens, what does that do will that change the behavior of Hezbollah in the north? Will it change the view of Egypt? Will it change the view of Iran? Because is that presumably the open question for the next couple of weeks? We just simply don't know what an invasion will mean militarily and then diplomatically.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very hard to see how conflicts escalate. I mean, there's a reason why we have these cliches. The hospital bombing has put extra pressure on Hezbollah, for example, to carry out its threat of getting involved. It said it would respond to what it sees as Israeli atrocities in Gaza. It's told its people, the people believe fully that this is an atrocity. Can it back down now? I don't know. I mean, there's always a little bit sliver of hope that underneath all the rhetoric, there's some calmer heads. It would be nice to think that they're there somewhere, but by which I mean they don't just react to individual incidents like this. But if Israel goes in and there are more of these terrible things happening, of course, that just creates ever more of a narrative amongst the Arab people. You don't have to think about the governments, the Arab people, that that some sort of response is necessary. The people in the Arab world, particularly after the Arab Spring, which was such a disaster for the Arab people. I mean, leave aside the governments, Arab people feel that their wishes are not taken into account, that they are living in a state of no dignity. Dignity is often a word you hear mentioned because the poverty that many people in the Arab world experience, the feeling that they're being left out, if you like, of other states' economic and social and modernizing growth. They feel very angry. We see a lot of anger just at their own governments, and often that anger is expressed as the need to take on Israel, as to we must be able to compete with Israel because Israel has, this country that is so hated, has become so successful in many ways, and so you see that anger on the streets very visibly now in places.